Hi. So let's talk about how to build a framework, or actually, if we should build one or shouldn't. And to start with, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Jakub, and I'm from a company called Wingu. And we work with the iBeacons, locations, NFC recently, and stuff like that. So everything which is location-based related, we try to put inside our SDK and ship it to the customers. And the reason that I tell you about this is we start the project as a normal iOS app, and we face the issue that our customers want to have a slightly different option, and not everything should be shipped inside the same framework. So inside the same app, sorry. So we need to split the application in the framework and actually in the couple of frameworks. And that gives us the idea of this is a pretty cool way of work. And if you have separate project for example, only iBeacon or only geofences, you can easily focus when you're working on that to extract the maximum value of it and then connect to the dependency manager in your core project. And the thing is, if you want to ask yourself, so you have the one app that do it all, works, and everything's fine. And basically, what I'm telling now is we need to split this up and make 10, 5, or 15 projects into from them and connect it to a dependency manager. And the question is, why bother? And should we really do it? And what's the benefits of it? And the problem is that it's always, the one solution is that always you have the boilerplate code. So for example, you import the Alamofier in your project, and you connect the dependencies. And every developer or every team of developers have a different way of working with Alamofier. It's not the standard way. So you create a network layer in top of Alamofier, and then copy and paste these classes from project to another project. And it's kind of a boilerplate code. So you take the time in the beginning of the project to bootstrap it and just copy and paste it. Of course, you can use a sorcery from Krzysiek Zabłocki to do the things for you. You can use different way of work, but actually it's your code. So you have it working, and you want to share it across all your apps, right? So why not do it a framework out of it? So you have Alamofier and framework on top of Alamofier. And this is one solution that one problem that you may have. And the second is, if we have one foundation framework to work with all iOS, macOS, watchOS, the code can be reusable. So if you have a game or something, or the app that you want to port for watchOS or maybe the tvOS, it can be easily, the core of this can be easily shareable for this different targets. And I will focus on this presentation on that part to make the application that is dedicated to iOS to work also with macOS. And yeah, like I said, we have it was actually the circles here, but it's not visible. We have 4 SDKs from Apple, and it's iOS, watchOS, macOS, and tvOS. And it all gathered by the foundation framework. So, and foundation itself is really powerful. So you have collection types there. You have a core data workings there, and directly all your data model can go with a foundation. So if you have foundation in your data model and you can do framework of this, it came out that it's a single source of truth for that. So whenever you have to change it and have multiple targets using your libraries, it will be always be you will be always up to date with the changes, and you don't have to change a lot of project settings in there. So, but what Apple does to support this. Let's see on iOS, watchOS 4.0 release. So with the same time, Apple introduced the Core ML. So with a new watchOS is support for machine learning. It's a bolded line in app services. And this is pretty neat because it doesn't really make sense to get Core ML on watchOS since there is so much more power in the phone and so much more power in the Mac. But it's there anyway. And every new frameworks that make sense, it's always across all the 4 platforms. Of course, there is no ARKit on watchOS because how it should work. But Core ML, for example, have a support for it. And if you scroll down this release note for developers to the bottom and see the system update, it tells this updated the API in the core Bluetooth framework to match across iOS, tvOS, watchOS, and macOS. And I think it's pretty cool because now we have no difference between the method names, between the variable names, and sorry. And whenever you looking for peripherals or centrals there will be one code that you can write and will work across the devices. Of course, there is a limitation there, but let's go further in a minute. So let's have a closer look on the SDK that Apple provide. So we have, for example, Core Location. And Core Location is the framework that is also for all foundations for all foundation supported platform. So it will work also on iOS, macOS, watchOS. But in the watchOS, for example, that is stripped out to not support iBeacons, for example. You have core location frameworks, but you cannot range for beacons. So you cannot use really that method to locate for it, but to range for the beacons. But importing core location and paste the same method inside the class and just mark the target that this method is only for iOS and macOS, for example, it's pretty powerful itself. So you just write an extension to existing class and it will work. The rest of the stuff here is basically the same. But here is another thing there. It's also work with SpriteKit and SceneKit. And I also found it pretty cool because if you write the simple game for iOS, it can work on tvOS. And if you have like only different visual layer of it, you have the same core. And when you want to update it and add new features there, you only change in the code in the one place. That's pretty cool. So let's have a look on the basic object, the NS object. It's available on all the platform, on iOS, macOS, tvOS. That's a pretty boring thing because it's basically no one do anything useful with NS object itself. But have a look on the Alamofire. Alamofire is have 4 targets. You can always build it for all available platforms, and it's extend the NSURL session. So if NSURL session is in the foundation layer, so what Matt Thompson probably do is get the foundation layer and just change the target and strip out the method which is not included in the different method, and that's really good. And for UI view, and in UI view it's a different case because UI view is a part of UIKit, and UIKit is only work on iOS and tvOS, right? So you cannot really use it on macOS applications because macOS applications use NSView, and it's from framework for AppKit. And since you can have model layer in the framework, you cannot really have the view layer on the framework. So this leads to I will show this screen once more time because Alamofire does not have this problem. They have only the network layer on NSURL session, so they cannot have the different dependencies there. And The next question is how to test something like that. You don't have any run. You cannot, if when you're creating the framework, you just cannot press the command R to just run the project and see the results. It's like when you fetching the request, you can see the output on the screen, on the logs, on something like this. But with building a framework, you cannot really do it. It's basic example how you test it is just to write a test. So it's in my opinion, it's a perfect way to learn unit testing if you're not using it, because every method forces you to write the unit test for it. And the great benefit of it is you cannot really be sure if it's working until you test it. It's a slogan, I know, but it's perfect example with writing a framework. You cannot check it like this with only this scheme. Of course, you can add the target and log it and call the method every time, but it's a more hassle. So I strongly suggest that command U will be the key to compile and run the test every time you're writing a framework. So it's the 3 wide rectangles or the semi-transparent wide. Yeah. But let's talk about the scary thing that every iOS developer came across it, and it's called MV. You know the last letter, MVC. It's there is a lot of discussion if it's right or wrong. In one case is right, in most cases is wrong. But it's a perfect example how you can test parts of the application. And most likely, if you can test it, you can do a framework with it easily. So like I said, the model is contain the NS object, NS manage object, NS URL session, and all of kind of data collections. So writing a framework contains only the model. It's a pretty obvious thing to do, because you cannot do any extra work from this. So when you manipulating with the data, you can check out the framework and build a framework out of it, and it just will work. But the next step is the view. And what should we do with the view? Because like I said a couple of slides earlier, we have a NS view and UI view. And it's from the different SDKs that Apple provide. So in the beginning, you have to think about, is there really a point testing the view? Because devices, it's slightly different. So you have like iOS that has to be 44 by 44 and have to match the fingers size. And it's a slightly different way of working. And for macOS, you don't have these limitations. The items can be smaller. So the thing is that if we want to build the cross-platform framework with views, it's really a point to make it. And I think in some cases it's really worth it, because imagine complex animation that you can do across all the platforms. That's pretty cool. And to achieve that is we just use this for type aliasing the views that is on other platforms. So we have NS view on AppKit and UI view on UIKit, and we just type aliases for a view, and every class from view will subclass from this view, actually. And let's see on the methods how it works. So on the right side is UI view, on the left side is NS view, and some methods are actually the same. So if you called remove from superview, it will get removed from superview, of course, and there is no difference between UI view and NS view. When you have layer, it's in one case it can be optional from NS view, and it's not optional from UI view. And this can lead to a problem, but nothing that can be solvable. So from the frame, for example, it's for one side is CGRect, for the other side is NSRect. And this can be also easily solvable, so that's not really an issue. And the same from the drawing method. But the last thing is, you will think that alpha is the alpha, and if you can change the view, view alpha is only changing the parameter of alpha. And it's actually not that simple, because on UIKit it's called alpha, but on NS view it's called alpha value. So if you have different name of variable, you have to write an extension, override the setter and stuff like that. And it's really one of the examples that it's not consistent across the platforms. Okay, so I would like to write some demo. Hopefully Xcode will allow us to do it. And yeah, if you think the Xcode is unstable on regular basis, try to make the multi-target project. It's really new level of instability. Okay, so I will get a chair for this. So I prepared a project that you can see. I prepared the project. Sorry, I have to. All right. All right. Now, should I make it bigger, the presentation mode, or this is enough? Okay. Okay. Okay, so I have 4 targets here. One is the iOS target, the second one is macOS target, and this is the frameworks, first 2, and the third and fourth one is the target for just putting, just show the screen. And let's start with the iOS. And in iOS, I have something like black rectangle on the screen, on the center of the screen, and nothing else. So let's switch to this target. Let's build it and run it. It should build. Yeah. And the thing is, it's contain only one demo, one class that it's I call it SomeView, and the target membership is only set for iOS right now. So let's start with writing the thing that we usually do. So we want to make the red border in this view. So we called awake from NIP, layer, border color, UI color, red CG color, and layer border width, let's say 10. And of course, you know what will happen. It will show as a rectangle on, yeah, it's just marked as red. And let's do some animation of it. And I have this snippet for animation, and just add it to the layer. Add animation, view animation for string background color. Okay, and it will start animating this view from one color to another. That's pretty simple thing to do. And to achieve that, I import this view to storyboard and have a class that it's from module mobilization 2017 iOS. And it's just it. It's when you want to start typing it, and like said, it's UI view. If you start typing some view, it will automatically fill the module that is important to the project. And the module is imported to in the level of project settings. So if you have an iOS demo, I just import the framework for embedded binaries. That's pretty much it. And what I would like to do is to build a Mac app from that. And to achieve that, I will hit the command build. Of course, it will build success. So let's run it. And this will display absolutely nothing right now. So because I didn't connect the target membership yet. So let's connect the target membership for that and hit the command run once again. It will fail to build because there is no such module as UIKit. So let's do this snippet that I mentioned earlier. This type aliases for view as NSView and UI view is also a view. So on this level, when we hit the command build, it will says that use undeclared type of UI view. Of course, I have to subclassing from view and hit the build one more time. And it's actually this one is use of it's actually the issue here because layer is not optional anymore. But let's focus now on UI color and make the same thing here. So public type alias color, NS color, and public type alias color, UI color. And this will silence these issues, but it will create a new one. Sorry, I didn't change the things here and here and here. Okay, and it says value of optional type CA layer. It can be easily fixable for Mac target by just adding this, but we cannot really do it because then iOS target will not. It's not optional, so the compiler will complain about why we have the question mark here. So to achieve that, let's do a simple abstraction layer. It may be overhead on this point, but it will benefit later. So let's create a func, draw border, and as a parameter called layer, CA layer, and put the things here. Okay, and call this method draw border layer. Oops, layer. Okay, and one thing we have to do here is this should be in an optional to support both of macOS and iOS. And we can, for example, guard it and make it fallback. So my layer, its layer, and this could be the code for fallback. And it really depends of the use case. If you want to do something with when there is no layer on macOS, because there's not needed to be a layer on macOS. But this basically guardlet. This basically covered the case that to handle the optionals or not. There is a different way of doing that. I've choose this one. And let's run it for target Mac, and you may expect a crash on this level. Nothing happened right now, but it's building because we have to do exactly the same thing as we do earlier with iOS. So let's call this view some view, and that's what I meant with the Xcode is try to importing iOS, but it's actually macOS. And let's build it one more time. So now we have exactly the same functionality on macOS and iOS. It's actually the same rectangle, and it's super responsive, and it's gathered from the same class. And you can reuse this code that we just write for the platform like tvOS also. So that's pretty cool to have one source of truth. And it's just the basic animation, right? It's just border, and you can easily copy and paste it. But if you have like more complex animation and you want to behave in the same matter of every device, and if you want to update it more often, for example, for when new design approach, it will get you consistent one source of truth across all your platforms. And let's go back to the presentation. And yeah, okay. All right, so in that point, you want to have like one type alias, and actually someone did it. So it's like gather all the differences and make the type aliases for different kind of thing. But let's rethink that, because I strongly believe that we should import the type aliases like I just do with NSRect to only support your target. And the main reason for that is this. It's a really huge list of things that it's different, and you can always do that, but it's created a lot of that code. So yeah, let's think again one more time. Is that view really worth it to make the framework out of it? And I will repeat myself one more time. It really depends. If you have like anchor point for NS view, it's in UI view it's always top left corner, but for NS view, for example, anchor point is bottom left corner. So it really depends if you want to support these cases. It's really good to have the one consistent button visible on macOS and iOS, for example, for your app, but you have to rethink every time if it's really needed. And of course, I just put the animations there, which is animate the alpha layer for 5 seconds, right? So it's, for me, this code above is much clearer and simple to read. It says UI view animate with duration 5 and change the alpha to 0. It's pretty straightforward, and everyone can tell what this code does in half of a second. On the other hand, there is a CA basic animation, and you cannot really tell directly what it does. You have to write grid from value to value, and it's just because you have to change the opacity key, and it's not that straightforward. And the reason for that I'm doing it that way, because UI view animate with duration doesn't have an equivalent of NS view. And if you really want to do the view-based classes support for iOS and macOS, you have to really be familiar with CA animation and core graphics, and because they work for all platforms. And it's really complex with combining the animations, but it's worth it, I think. So let's back to the MVC. And the C part here is pretty straightforward also. So the model is pretty well tested and can do the framework of it. From the view, we have like it depends kind of style, but for controller, it's actually something different, because when you try to make the controller, it's actually came to you that some of the code that from controllers can be moved to model, and some of the part from controllers can be moved to view, and the controllers get smaller and smaller. So if you translate MVC like massive view controller, it's when you're doing the framework, it's actually prevent that there's a massive view controller, because you don't want to copy and paste code over the time. And in the end, I would like to have a short talk about the dependencies here, because there is two main dependency managers, and the Cartridge and CocoaPods, of course. And for doing the framework, Cartridge is super easy to use. It can set up in 5 minutes. Just you install Cartridge and push the dependencies, and just paste the link for the repository, and just download the library that is pushed to master. So whenever you push to master, you can directly call method Cartridge update, and it's just work. So, but it has some downsides of it. So, of course, for the dependency manager, Cartridge supports only dynamic frameworks, which we want. But like I said, setup frameworks is super easy. Its build time is extremely fast because it's precompiled. But the startup time of the app, it may suffer. From the CocoaPods, it's something similar. Startup time will be pretty fast because this does not necessarily contain the frameworks. Build time will be higher, and what I don't like about it is change project structure. So it's get you the workspace and change your project files that may contain valuable things for you. And to choose one or over another, it's not really easy thing to do, because like I just said, creating a framework may be pretty easy, and hopefully for this talk you can create a framework and maybe contribute for open source, because it's a nice thing to do. And yeah, if you want to build a framework, let's start with the Cartridge, right? So we create the framework with Cartridge, but let's ask yourself if you really will use it and feel good about yourself if you will not support the CocoaPods. I will not take this framework seriously if it's not support CocoaPods. So you end up with supporting both in the end. And if you're building the framework from your internal code only for yourself, just take the dependency manager you want, because that you will be use it. So it's your call. Yeah. So that's it for me. If you have any questions, please ask, and thank you.
So hi, very nice talk. I like it. Maybe you heard that 2 weeks ago there was an article about why so many iOS developers sticking to the Objective-C still, and one of the main reasons was that Swift ABI it's not pretty good. To be honest, it's pretty bad. And right now I see that you're using a lot of frameworks, I guess, written in Swift.
Yeah.
So does not this bother you that if anything change on this level, on the ABA level, you will have a lot of issues if you framework everything in your project?
Yeah, actually, I think it's a right way to go in the maintenance, because Apple clearly go to the direction of Swift. And when we start changing our app, as I said at the beginning, that we have an app working with mixed Objective-C and Swift, and we decide every new class we will create in Swift. But we have this discussion about this, if we should sometimes compromise with Objective-C method, and it actually doesn't matter that much, because you can still have the bridging headers and support both language in the same library. But I don't suffer anymore from the Swift. If it's something different, there is some difference in the naming convention. Like for example, table views. Table views in Objective-C can return not necessarily UI collection view cell. UI table view cell, but in Swift it's changed. But we just write an extensions for it and try to work with this as much as possible. And there is a great open source gist files to just changing it.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.